This week's episode of the And She Looked Up podcast is brought to you by Fine Lime Illustrations. If you love quirky, colorful art transformed into fun, handmade stationery items, pretty much guaranteed to brighten somebody's day, that's just what you'll find in my new online shop at finelimeillustrations.com. That's fine as in I'm fine, lime as in the fruit, illustrations.com. Browse the entire collection or sign up for my email list to see some behind-the-scenes peeks into my studio. You'll also get first notice of new product launches and subscriber-only sales. And as an added little bonus, you'll also receive a free coloring sheet to help you relax and de-stress from your day. And now, on with the show. Welcome to the And She Looked Up podcast. Each week, we sit down with inspiring Canadian women who create for a living. We talk about their creative journeys and their best business tips, as well as the creative and business mindset issues all creative entrepreneurs struggle with. I'm your host, Melissa Hartfield, and after leaving a 20-year career in corporate retail, I've been happily self-employed for 12 years. I'm a graphic designer, an illustrator, and a multi-six-figure-a-year entrepreneur in the digital content space. This podcast is for the artists, the makers, and the creatives who want to find a way to make a living doing what they love. Hello, everyone, and welcome to not just another episode of the And She Looked Up podcast, but also a brand new season of the podcast. As always, I am your host, Melissa, and this is the season opener of season 5. And it wouldn't be a season opener if I didn't have my semi-regular guest host with me here today. Heather Travis is with me. And well, hey, Heather, how are you?
I'm delightful, Melissa, and I'm particularly delightful to be here with you.
I am super excited for this season. I have already recorded some episodes. So even though this is the season opener, it is not the first episode that I've recorded. And I'm very excited about some of the guests we're going to be bringing you this season and some of the things we're going to be talking about. And yeah, I think it's just going to be a really fun season. It's season 5, but it is actually only year 4 of the podcast because I did 2 seasons in year 1. So I don't know if it's worth having a celebration for season 5 or if I should wait till year 5. I can never really tell what to do with this show. But
I think you should celebrate. I think you should celebrate both because both are a huge accomplishment. Honestly, like you should pat yourself on the back. And when you hit any type of milestone, like, I enjoy a good milestone number of episodes. I think all of those deserve, everybody should get a milk bone. Everybody.
Yes. I'd like something better than a milk bone, to be honest. I hope all of you have had a wonderful summer, and we are really looking forward to chatting with all of you this season. Heather will be back multiple times, I am sure, but she's very busy right now because she is launching her first solo art exhibition in
16 days.
16 days, but when this airs, it will actually only be 8 days.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So right around the corner. Trying to do the math in my head. Yes, she is launching her very first solo art exhibition on September 16th. And Heather, maybe give us some details about where that's going to be and how long it's going to be running, because I know them, but I know I'm going to get them wrong if I say them. So you'll get it right.
Yes. It is a solo exhibition at the Bruce County Museum and Cultural Center, which is located in Southampton, Ontario, beautiful Southampton, Ontario. And it runs from September 16th through December 31st, 2023. And all works will be available for sale. I will also be having limited run prints of almost every painting available, as well as limited run coffee table book that has all of the prints basically and the stories. I've written stories behind every single painting, so I talk about source of inspiration and stuff. It's all very exciting. And I'm also doing a bunch of other events at the museum in addition to the opening event, which happens on September 16th. So there'll be like a little cocktail party and people. And can I just tell you, Melissa, I have ordered custom sneakers for the event that have one of the paintings that I painted for the exhibit on the frickin' sneaker.
Oh my goodness, how fun. That's super
How
fun.
fun.
This is
Yeah.
a big exhibition too. This is like 40 paintings, isn't it? Like,
Yes, there are well, it's 32 works of art covering
okay.
35 canvases. Yeah. But you know me, I mean, and for those of you who obviously are listening, Melissa and I are chatting and we can see our beautiful smiles. But in the background, Melissa can see one of the paintings, and it's one of, I think, 7 or 8 that are 6 feet tall by 3 feet wide. So
Mm.
well, I don't want to say
Heather
only 30.
doesn't paint small very
I
often.
don't know.
She does
No.
occasionally, but usually she paints big.
Yeah, correct. Anyway, so it's 35 canvases, 32 works of art, and it covers like it's gonna fill. My goal was to fill the room when I went in like a year and a half ago to see the exhibition space. I looked around and I was like, wow, all these walls are it's like, when you're a kid and you could put posters up in your room and you're like, I can put it anywhere. That was the feeling I had. And I was like, I can put my stuff anywhere I want in this room. And so I tried to make enough art that I could.
That is very cool. So, what we're going to be talking about today, you know what? I am so all over the place today. This is a terrible season opener. I'm so sorry, everyone. I was telling
This is not.
before we started that my operating system updated overnight, and it has just thrown me off today. But before we dive too far into this, we should just introduce Heather properly, because if you are brand new to the podcast and you don't know who she is, she pops by about once a month to guest host with me, but she is also an artist, a painter. She focuses mainly on paintings and murals, large scale, as we mentioned, but she does do some smaller things too. But I would say it's fair to say you're mostly known for your bigger pieces. Would that be fair?
Yes.
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 She is very bright, bold, and colorful. She is also a PR and communications specialist. So she often pops on to the show to talk about the business side of creating with me, because she is also an artist. She wears both hats like we both do. So
Yes.
so
All the hats.
that is who Heather is. And today what we're going to be talking about is how this exhibition came to be, sort of from the genesis of the idea through all the prep work and all the things that she has been doing to get ready for this show. So we're going to be talking about where the idea came from, how she got funding, how long the work has taken her, what she's been doing. She mentioned that she's doing an exhibition coffee table book, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with if you've been to like a big exhibit at the Ego or the Vancouver Art Gallery. In the gift shop, they always have the coffee table book of the exhibition. She's put together one of those, and we're going to talk about all of that today, because I think doing an exhibition of this size is something that most people would be a little bit nervous about doing if they've never done before. And it's really, yeah, of course. And you don't know what you don't know, right? You don't know all the things that are involved until you're actually in the thick of it. And I think that knowing that you don't know things can be something that can hold us back from trying things, because we a lot of uncertainty there. So anyway, we're going to be walking through all of that today with Heather. She's going to be telling us how she's brought this to fruition, because it is almost to fruition, and hear all about that. So let's start with let's start at the very beginning. What made you think that you would like to do an exhibition, and what was the impetus for you saying, I'm going to do it and get started?
Yes. Okay. Can we, and I'm going to just quickly veer off the road for 2 seconds, and I will circle very quickly back to your question. When you just said we're almost here, I can't even tell you, like, I don't know if you can hear it, but my heart is like beating out of my chest. Like I was like, oh, gulp moment. Anyway, deep
I
breaths.
can see it on Heather's face for those of you listening, but you can't see it on her face, but you might be able to hear it in her voice, because you can kind of hear the little catch there.
Yeah, there are. It's like this is overwhelming is overwhelming is the overriding word that I have been experiencing.
Well,
Anyway,
you're still in the great unknown. because you
Oh,
haven't
sweet
actually
peaches,
done the
yes.
thing yet. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you've prepped
Yeah.
for it, but the
Oh
thing,
my gosh.
yeah.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, so the genesis of this, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like most artists, if you paint large scale paintings like I do, an exhibition is something you always hope for. You don't know how it's going to happen. You don't know what it's going to look like. Obviously, there's lots of different ways for an exhibition to happen, including you could self fund it, you could self host it, you could rent out a location. There's so many different ways you can make an exhibition happen. I had not fleshed out any of the thinking of that. It was just sort of like exhibition would be if I was putting something on a vision board, having an exhibition was as focused as I got. It wasn't, I had no idea what that looked. I had no idea what the rest of that
Right.
looked like. Um, but the genesis of the actual exhibition came to be because a painting that I completed, in fact, 3 years ago, like this week, which is kind of crazy, the timing of all of this, was hanging in restaurant here in our community above a table. And the executive director of the Bruce County Museum, Kathy McGurr, sat at the table and really enjoyed the painting and contacted me a couple of weeks later and said, I love this painting. I would like to buy it for the county's permanent collection. And I said, oh my goodness, thank you so much. The painting happens to just have been sold, but I could paint you another in a similar style. And she said yes. So she commissioned a painting for the county's permanent collection. And so it's an abstract painting of Bruce County nature, whatever. Anyway, in my style, of course. And she commissioned it for the county. It now rotates around different county office buildings and blah, blah, blah. And then once that was delivered, she sent me a note. And this is literally like 2.5 years ago now. She asked me if I would be interested in having an exhibition hosted at the museum. And of course, I said yes. And then COVID happened. And so there was like asterisks on like find me a creative pursuit that isn't the asterisk, right? In terms of either I had the time to do something or I didn't have the time to do something or I'd effed up my plans or whatever. And so the exhibition was supposed to happen sooner than it did. I believe last September was the original date.
Right.
And then COVID happened and plans had to change. In the time that the plans changed, I was constantly thinking, and you and I have talked about this, I was constantly thinking to myself, I can't just paint happy things. I need to like actually say something about my art. And I don't know what I want to say or how I want to say it or any of that stuff. And so I was offered a program opportunity to be part of it. It was called the Rural Creative Springboard, and it was put on by Artscape Daniels Launchpad in Toronto and the Canadian Centre for Rural Creativity.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it was a COVID support program basically for artists all across the country. And I believe there were like 30 of us in the program, and we were in from every province across the country, and we met every day on Zoom, and there were speakers and there was a whole bunch of opportunities. But one of the opportunities that came up through that was the opportunity to, well, first off, they exposed us to a lot of the granting opportunities that I had just not really dug into. And so when they exposed us to that, they then introduced us to a grant writing expert. I'll call her. Her name is Tasha Schumann. And Tasha, I love you because she was honestly super helpful. I had sessions with her to help fill out my grant application, which I was awarded a $20,000 Canada Council for the Arts grant in support of the exhibition. And that really helped pull everything together. Like it was the exhibition offer opportunity. And then like, what the heck am I going to do with myself? COVID hit. I get this program opportunity. It was like a whole weird series of coincidences led to the paintings that are going to be on display being created and being put up. I don't think if COVID had happened and I had had to pull stuff together, the collection would have looked entirely different and it would have had a much different focus. It would have been smaller because my resources would have been smaller because I wouldn't have had $20,000 to play with, which is a chunk of change. And yeah, so it honestly, the whole thing, I've been thinking about it a lot because like it was such a whole weird series of things that just happened. And then all of a sudden they conspired to really stir my pot. And like what I've pulled together, I'm pretty proud of myself. And it's honestly a little like when I got the coffee table book this week, the first proof, I cried. It was overwhelming to see everything all together. And like I had written all of the stories, but seeing all of them there and like literally flipping through, it was like I'm showing it to Melissa right now. It's like it's the coolest book I've ever read because I wrote it. And yeah, like it's just crazy, honest. And the fact that it's like I created all of this stuff and it's not even out in the world yet. And I'm just like so immensely proud of it already. And it hasn't gone out there. And I am I'm bursting with like, I cannot wait for the opening day. Cause I just like, I mean, I don't know whether people are going to like it, but I just know people are going to love it. Do you know what I mean? Like, and in a, like, how can you, like, the colors are so happy. I have no idea how any person will be able to walk into the exhibit room and not just be like, cup filled, joy, done, happy colors. Like whether you appreciate the art, appreciate the inspiration, any of that stuff, whether you want it hanging in your living room. I mean, I hope there's people who want it hanging in their living room because I really would like to sell it. But yeah.
Well,
Anyway.
you know what? Even though nothing has happened. That is not what I meant to say.
No, I know what you mean though.
Hasn't opened yet.
Yep.
Regardless, you have created this huge body of work that is very meaningful to you. And that is a huge accomplishment all on its own, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh, absolutely. And funny enough, I've been thinking I have to speak at the opening reception. And so, being a speaker and a professional communicator, I have been writing notes and rehearsing and trying to like master. And my process is very, in my own head. I don't make actual notes. I just make mental notes and go back to them and rehearse. Anyway, if anybody runs into me on my morning walk and sees me talking, that's what I'm working on but as I have been doing that, I have been thinking about what this has done for me. And I really do I feel like a snake who's shed their skin, in that there's like a layer or a release that has happened. I have released myself of it and released it something else into the world because of that. And both of those releases, like the releasing of what I released in painting, the like cathartic nature of the celebration aspect that I took, and then everything just plus like I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of like, I don't know, there's just good energy coming from it. That sounds so woo-woo, but anyway.
No, I totally get where you're coming from. And you've mentioned several things that I want to touch on. But the very first thing I want to touch on, because this is something you and I have talked about many times on this podcast, for those of you listening, and for those of you, we've done many episodes on social media and why it's not the end all and be all, and why it's so important to focus on building a community, and why you shouldn't neglect local marketing and grassroots and in-person marketing. We've done many episodes on this. I will put some links to this in the show notes. Can we just go back to the fact that the reason this exhibition is happening is because you had a painting hanging in a local restaurant?
Yes. No, honestly, I think about it all the time, Melissa. There's so many, funny enough, like you and I like find me an episode of something you and I have talked about. Find episodes that relate to so many different things. Like honestly, I
Research
feel
and
like
relationships. We talk
oh
about
my gosh, like
still.
all of it, all of it, all of it, all of it. Like you could link, I bet you, like, here are the show notes for today's episode. Every other podcast episode. Those are the show notes.
Well, quite literally, we
Uh
have mentioned this very thing in multiple
yeah,
episodes of like approaching
yeah,
local businesses, restaurants, hotels,
yep.
and seeing if they would be interested in hanging your work on the wall. Now, obviously, we're not all painters, okay, but the
Mhm.
the idea is the same. You have to get your
Yes.
work out there. It has to be seen before opportunities come your way. And yes, you can do that on social media, but you're missing out on so many opportunities by limiting yourself to only doing it on social media. So I just want to
Absolutely.
reinforce that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, as part of all of this process, I've hosted paint nights locally.
Mhm.
There have been things that I have been doing locally, even as part of
Yes.
the exhibition. I'm doing PA day activities, or sorry, PD day activities, whatever they call it, the things that the kids have the day off school.
Yes.
I am
Pro D
hosting
day. Yeah.
activities at the museum. Exactly. Um, there's in-person events, but even to me, and funny enough, like I just had a little contest on my Instagram for my shirt with Heather, and one of the gals who won it, well, both gals who won are local. One is significantly closer, and so she picked her prize up in person, and we hugged and got to say hello. And
Mhm.
I said to her, this is the magic, this is the beauty of this platform, is that you and I are able to connect in person. And now that we've met face to face, like there's
The connection
everything.
is much deeper and more meaningful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And interestingly, even in terms of connection and community, the people that I met, the creatives who were all different things, like there were poets, there were welders, there were really interesting creatives that were part of this rural creative program. We met, every day, 4 days a week, on Zoom, and we all follow each other on Instagram now. But that connection, because we connected on Zoom, we're each other's, we're big supporters of each other. And some of us are local and have met locally now
Mhm.
and continue to support. And that local connection cannot be underestimated. And in fact, I would say my most avid Instagram followers are also my our local supporters.
Mhm.
Like they're people who are part of the community who champion me at every turn, and that's incredible.
Yeah.
But I think that's that connection. Yeah, yeah. There's so many uh cheerleaders on Instagram, but there's not enough real supporters. And the real supporters are the people who send you messages that mean something.
Mhm.
And also, I think those people tend to be the people who you want to meet in person or have met in person. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Even doing this podcast, some of the guests that I get to talk to and have relationships with that carry on
yep,
past them being a guest on the podcast, it's a much deeper
yep,
relationship because we're sitting down for an hour and having a really deep conversation and sometimes
yes,
about very deep personal things. And I wouldn't have,
yep.
you don't get that through social media. So,
No, 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 no,
yes,
gosh, no, no.
I just wanted to point that out to everyone. Don't
Yeah.
get your stuff hung
Oh,
up in
yeah.
restaurants. No, think of it from a broader
Yes.
perspective. But it is so important to just remind yourself now and then that it's not just social media that gets you these opportunities. In fact, the
Yes.
best opportunities tend to come off of social media. So it's really important to
Yes.
keep that in mind, especially, I've been hearing this so much lately, and I think people are late to the party even saying this, but platforms like Instagram and Facebook are no longer attract marketing. They are nurture marketing because
Yep.
we don't get that kind of massive growth that we were getting a few years ago, maybe on TikTok, but really nowhere else. And so
No.
you have to start working other avenues to get seen and to build those relationships. And it is about relationships. This woman reached out to you after seeing your painting in a restaurant. The painting was
Hmm.
sold. You could have just said, I'm really sorry, it's sold, end of story, right?
Hmm.
But instead, you offered this woman an alternative. she took it and you started to
Yep.
form that relationship and it carried through. And even if it never resulted in an exhibition,
Hmm.
you still have a painting that has traveled around Bruce County and been
Yep.
seen by other people. So that even if it had ended there, it would have been successful, right?
Yes.
So,
Yep.
but it
Absolutely.
instead it opened even more doors. And so I think that lesson has to be really shouted from the treetops. Like
Yes. Yes.
thing.
And even funny enough in terms of local, so the museum, as part of their hosting of the exhibition, not only do they provide the space and host a cocktail reception and other events that I'm doing, et cetera, et cetera, they do advertising and promotions in support of the exhibition.
Of course, yeah.
And I've been doing some work at an office in this the city. And the number of people who walk past my little office and, Heather, I heard your name on the radio this morning. I heard your name on the radio this morning. And then because they're doing exhibition promo, so of course they're doing it. I have two radio interviews locally. And what's super cool about, like, we're in a rural area. While I don't listen to the local radio,
A lot of people
because
do.
I listen. Yeah, a lot of people do, and
Mhm.
particularly the people who live here and have
Yeah.
lived here for a long time,
Yes.
and
Right.
and and I'm like, it pleases me to no end when they're like, "I heard your name on the radio," and I'm like, "Yeah, you did. That's
There's
so
still
cool."
something about being on traditional media that means a little
Oh
bit
my God.
more than social
Oh my.
media, you know? I don't know
Oh,
why. Don't know
yep.
why, but
Totally. Totally.
um
Totally.
yeah, I do think it's important to mention that because I think it would also be easy to say that it was just luck that somebody saw it in a restaurant, but it's not luck. You created the luck by getting your
Yes.
work out there. And so
Yes.
what do they say?
Yes.
Luck is
Luck is
just
where preparation meets
preparation.
opportunity.
Yes, exactly. And that is so what it is. So
Yep.
so you got approached, you had the opportunity to to put on an exhibition. So I'm curious about when she came to you and offered you this opportunity. What did she say to you? Did she just say, "This is your space. You figure it out, you fill it up," or did they give you any kind of guidance or suggestions, or was it just like, "Go"?
Yeah, it literally was, here's the dates that we want to host you. Here's the space that we want to host you in. Are you interested? And I was like, yeah. And then like the whole drive home, holy fuck, holy fuck, holy fuck. Like literally,
How big is the
and
space? Like, can you tell? Do you know the square footage or the square meters or?
yes, yes. Hold on. Let me pull that information out of my handy dandy notebook here, Melissa. Hold on. It is venue
Just to give people
maps.
an idea of how much space we're talking about here.
Yeah, so it is 97 feet of wall space. So it's a big room. It's
Yeah.
a 40 feet by 34 foot room. So
Okay,
what's
so it's
that?
one room. They're not wandering
No.
through rooms. Like it always depends on the building, right? Some of the
Yeah.
older buildings have a lot of
Yeah.
small rooms that feed into each other. So it's one
Yeah.
large room.
Yes.
And one question I have is like from a curation perspective in terms of you are not going to be hanging the paintings. I think it's pretty safe to say that. They don't usually.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
so that's usually the curator that does that.
yes, although
So
I have given them direction in how I want things to be arranged.
that was going to be my question. How much input did you have into, because I would imagine there's a certain extent where they give you input in terms of like, these need to be grouped together. This is a story, this is a theme here or whatever. But how much of it, like, is there going to be stuff in the middle of the room?
So
Like,
yes, there's going to be it basically it's one large room. If you imagine sort of a weird, not a rectangle, it's got maybe, I don't know, I'm really bad at math. And I'll tell you, did a lot of math for this exhibition. It's amazing how many paintings I was like, wait a minute,
crazy how
I need to
math just
I need to
catches up
figure
with
out
you.
how many concentric circles and fit onto this. Anyway, it was, yes, I did a lot of math. It's a room with a variety of angles. And so there's, I believe, one, two, three, 5 walls that make up like a semicircle, if you will.
Oh, okay, almost like
Um,
an arc, but
correct,
not a
exact,
round arc, a rectangular arc.
exactly. Um, and then when you walk into the room, there's like a solid wall to one side, but there is actually a variety of pillars, and I have the ability to hang from the top of the room basically down in between those pillars. So that's where I refer to it as my Petrocelli, which is a reference to the delightful rom-com by with Josh Duhamel and Kristen Bell called When in Rome. Anyway, it's the Petrocelli of my exhibition. It's like the centerpiece, and it's a triptych, which is 3 large 6 foot by 9 or 6 foot by 3 foot canvases. So it'll be 6 feet tall by 9 feet wide, and it will hang in the center. So when you walk into the room, you'll actually see the back of those canvases, and then you'll walk into basically a large semicircle and be almost enveloped with my artwork. It will surround you.
Will there
Yeah.
be, when you go into some large exhibitions, there's actual, they're not, I'm going to call them plaques for lack of a better word, but they're not really plaques. They're like a large, I'm using my hands to show Heather what I mean here, and you all can't see that, but there's like a large signage with text on it explaining the artist's thoughts or themes or things like that, and those will be spread strategically around the exhibit to kind of help give the viewers a better understanding or a deeper understanding of the work or how the work was created, that kind of thing. If you've been to an art gallery, you know what I'm talking about.
It won't be for every painting.
No.
Like there won't be, I have not given the behind the scenes for the paintings. The sources of inspiration will be listed just because I think that's helpful if people are curious. And they do have a bio on me, and they do have, let's call it some like I sent them my show inspiration, some notes on it, some, obviously they have the listing of all of the paintings. And so they pulled together, the museum marketing staff actually pulled together all of the graphics for the promo, but as well, really lovely copy. Like the first time I read it, I was like, oh my God, this is me writing about. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, because often the curator will talk about the exhibit from their standpoint as the person who is presenting it. That's not the word I was looking for, but anyways, yes.
And that, I mean, it's actually quite cool to see it through somebody else's eyes, because I gave them the information. It's almost like a journalist. Like they interviewed me, and then here's what they spat out, but in the loveliest spit, because really, honestly, the information, like the marketing material, it's beautiful. Like what they have on the website, it's beautiful. What they say about me is beautiful. Like I'm very proud of myself, and they did it. Yeah, they're doing the exhibition topic and my effort very much justice, and I couldn't be more pleased and grateful, really.
That's fantastic.
So, yeah.
So you got to see the space. You got the the invitation to host an exhibition of your work. You saw the space, and you said you went home and you were like,
yeah.
And so your exhibition has a very definitive theme. You've been talking about it for months on social media. Maybe tell us a little bit about the theme, but really what I want to know is, how did you land on that theme? What was the thought process that brought you there? And was that the first thing you thought of, or was there other things in your head that kind of, like, how did that all come together for you?
Yeah. So, when the exhibition was first offered, because the timing was tighter, I was literally like, okay, what do I have in inventory right now that could go up? And then what could I create to complement that, to sort of help fill up the space in a meager attempt to fill up the space? And I wouldn't say I was disappointed with what I was thinking of pulling together, but I also was like, I really want to put new stuff out. I don't want to put stuff out that, for instance, has been hanging in a local restaurant. Like I wanted new stuff to be out there. And and then COVID answered my prayers because it
Small
delayed
mercies, right? Yikes.
because it delayed the plans, which then as I said, then I was offered the opportunity to get into that Rural Creative program, which then brought the grant opportunity in front of my face, which then thinking of myself, well, shit, like and this is where the genesis really came from, is I have this incredible opportunity for the exhibition that is now happening like way, way in the future. Like, when this all hit, like in 2019, like that was so way, way in the future. Do you know what I mean? Or 2020, time is a blur. Anyway,
Mhm.
it was so way, way in the future. I'm like, I have tons of time. And so I don't need to start thinking about this. I can pull a grant request together now that I have support and the ability to do that. And it was in the grant writing phase that I knew I couldn't just say, please give me a lot of money to continue to splash happy colors up on canvases.
Right.
And when I thought to myself, okay, I have this platform, I'm going to ask for a boatload of money. If I'm going to ask for something, I need to say something. And so, what am I going to use that platform for? And when I look at my paintings, where I would say 90% of my paintings, including the painting that Kathy, the executive director of the gallery or the museum, when they offered me the opportunity, the original painting that she wanted to buy, that went into a nursery, a childhood nursery. The sister painting to that went into the older sister's bedroom. Like 90% of the art that I sold went into bedrooms of children. We have talked about it a lot you and I have talked about this a lot in previous podcasts. My husband and I were never able to have children. It was something we tried for well over a decade to do, and we were never successful. And that shattered me. And so I do find it particularly ironic that I had visions, like the mural that I was going to paint in my first child's nursery has been painted in my brain for like 25 years. I know what that looks like.
Mhm.
Um, and art was a form of therapy for me. It helped me overcome, get past, move on, get through, climb over, lie under. It helped me do all the things. And I think any person who has a creative pursuit knows, dancing, you can feel so much joy dancing, and you can also let out all the sadness.
Mhm.
You can feel so much joy writing. You can also let out all the sadness and pain. And that is what art allowed for me. And so when I thought about, like, holy shit, I have this platform. I think I'm finally okay now to talk about my experience and be, this might sound bold of me, but I wanted to be the person that I frankly wished somebody else had been for me 15 years ago. The person who talked boldly and loudly about what they went through, what they walked through, what challenges they faced, how they overcame it, and be a shining example that life can be beautiful and amazing, even if, the way that you're under the tunnel is a different tunnel than you thought you'd end up in. Do you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
and so that, all of that really, when I sat back, and it was funny enough, the feedback that I got from Canada Council was that was the first line of my application, and the first line of my application was, the majority of paintings that I paint end up in the nurseries of the children that I was never able to have but always wanted. And And so that, I was like, boom, that's my origin story. And
Mhm.
then what do I want to do with that? And I didn't want to dwell in the pain, because that's just so not on brand for Heather. And that's just not the way I operate. I'm a glass half full, or like three-quarters full, or in fact 90% full most of the time. And so what I wanted to do was write new fairy tale endings. I wanted, and it started with, I don't know if you remember a painting, but Dana McCauley owns it. And it's the paper bag princess.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yep.
Yeah. So I painted that 4 years ago. And that painting, like the paper bag princess, has always been such an inspiration for me because, you know, I don't need boys. She lives a great life. Like that was one of the few childhood like feminist manifestos that I actually recall. Everything else for me was first comes love, then comes marriage, then comes baby and a baby carriage. Like that to me was the whole narrative. And like every fairy tale seemed to go that way. And so for me, this was the opportunity to write new fairy tales. And that's what the art is about. It's celebrating. That was a very long-winded answer. I'm sorry.
No, that's
That
okay.
was so there are 32 works of art covering 35 canvases. What I have done is celebrated, I believe there's 16 childless heroes or people I have identified as childless heroes. To name a few, Missy Elliott, Miss Piggy, Dolly Parton, Oprah, Betty White. There's a bunch of women that I have celebrated and interpreted, their like the painting of Betty White, which Melissa can see right behind me. Like it's not, you would never look at it and be like, well, that's Betty White. It's not Betty White, but it's inspired by Betty White. And so it's just it's what tickled my artistic brain when I was doing my research on these people. This is how this came out. Some it's a more literal, some it's not. And then there are also works of art that I'll say they unpack infertility, but in a very happy way. And and then there's also a few paintings that challenge our definition of family. So it's all based on the painting called This Must Be the Place, which is one of the first paintings that I painted for this exhibition. And in fact, it was before I started pulling the grant application together. I had painted this painting, and it's a portrait of Brian and I, and it's a celebration of us and the strength of us. And like, I'm gonna get emotional.
You're
Of
making me
all of,
cry. I know. I'm just like, oh no, this is not going to be good.
but it's a celebration of us, and
I can see the painting right now. It's in the background
yeah,
of our conversation. So I
yeah,
know the painting you're talking about.
yeah, and I mean, and what I love about that, I mean, it's us, it's the two of us, but to me, it doesn't have to be a man and a woman. It doesn't have to be a husband
It's
and
your
wife or
family.
spouses. It's
Your,
my family.
yes.
Yes, and I have had people buy prints of that it represents to them hope and connection. To them, it represents friendship. Like it doesn't. You see what you want, just like any art. The beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And so yeah, there's a lot of like past, I'll say past trauma that has been shed in this creation process. But as I said at the beginning, my goal is that when people walk into the room, they are just literally overwhelmed with joy, because this is not coming from a place of sadness or desperation or upset. It's actually coming from a place of joy and celebration and almost rebirth. This is, yeah, rebirth, but also birth. Like I have birthed something. I have created something massive. I did post this on Instagram, but it literally was exactly 9 months of painting. That irony is not lost on me. That was not planned. That's just the way it happened. A sentence I always wanted to say, but yep. Ding ding. Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of crazy, all of this stuff coming together, but it's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's a huge accomplishment even to get to this point. So kudos to you. So I'm going to throw this. This is not something I have talked to you about. So I'm going to throw this out at you. For those of you listening, I have mentioned this in an episode that's already been recorded. So you will hear me talk about this again, but this is the first time you'll hear it on the podcast. One of the things I try to do every year with the show is have some themes that run underneath things, and I don't usually announce them or talk about them. They're strictly for me and just things that I'm curious about or that I'm just wanting to explore. And as a podcast host and producer, that is one of my perks. I get to do that.
Yes.
But one of the ones that has been screaming at me this year extremely loudly, and it's one of the reasons why I'm kind of talking about it. And I think this has a little bit to do with getting older, but I think there's more to it than that. And it is this idea that and I'm going to have a hard time getting it out because I haven't even quite formulated it in my head, but this idea that it is okay for us to show up as who we are, and how we waste so much time, particularly with social media, trying to show up as who we think the world wants to see rather than the person that we are. And I think a lot of women are really freaking sick and tired of it.
Yes.
Like we're done. It's so much work to cover up who you are, and or to put a mask on, or to cloak it, or whatever you want to call it. And I think we've been hearing this term, showing up as your authentic self, for years now, to the point where it doesn't mean anything. What it means is you show up on Instagram and, you show your face on Instagram. That's your authentic self. Like, but it's not, because we're still covering up. Like, authentic self just doesn't, it's empty words at this point. That's how I feel about it. Maybe there's others out there who feel differently. So how much of this do you think is you just ready to show up as Heather?
Yeah. I would say 110%. In fact, and I too have been thinking about that,
like,
and
unapologetically too, like
unapologetic.
I think that's a key word in there.
Yeah, unapologetically, and honestly, Melissa and I were talking off the air. I've started a small contract role because I made no money in the entire year that I was pulling together. Exactly. So thank goodness for the grant. I made no money. And honestly, the money thing on pulling an exhibition together would be an episode in and of itself.
Yeah, we're going to touch on that before we wrap up a little bit on the grant and funding.
Yeah, but I've started this contract role part-time, and the freedom to walk into an office. And well, funny enough, the part of the reason that I left the office world, corporate world, and went freelance 8 years ago, and we have talked about this, was the sort of mommy culture in the office, and just being constantly like, I can't be myself, because if I'm pissed off that I have to go to another fucking baby shower in the goddamn office lunch kitchen, I'm gonna throw some bad grocery store cake at somebody. And
I love that grocery store cake, though.
Right. I know. Anyway.
And
so, but now, like, walking back into an office, I am so unapologetically me. And I am a delightful human being, and I have people tell me all the time.
I vouch for you on that.
That exactly. That's are you. But I have people tell me all the time, wow, you are exactly the same in person as you are on Instagram. And yes, there are lots of warts that I do not share on Instagram. And absolutely, I use a filter every time I post because my skin just looks a little bit nicer. And I'm totally okay with that. But I am me. I will swear. I don't care if you don't like my language. That's a you problem, not a me problem. There's a lot of things that I am over worrying if people judge me on it or for it. And that, to me, part of this is the celebration. Like, I want to celebrate, like, ta-da. Like, I feel like if there was a cake that I could jump out of at the exhibition opening to be like, bam, here's Heather, I would, because this is what it feels like. It feels like it's the official unveiling of me being me. And I really do, honestly, Brian has even commented, like, in the past few months, I feel like a weight has been lifted. And this has been coming for a while now, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's, yeah. And this, I think this whole process has been part of that.
Hmm.
And finding that freedom. And yeah, and I think part of that is age.
I was just going to say, I don't think you can tell me if I'm wrong, that this is something you could have done 5 years ago, 10 years ago,
No way.
15 years ago. You would have been in the middle of it. There's no way you could have processed it to the point where you could launch
Yeah.
an exhibition. So,
Yeah.
that's another one of my themes
I
this year is like growing older and wiser.
oh
Not just older,
honestly,
but growing wiser.
and wiser. And I would say I don't think that this and I'll call it leveling up because there has been I have a new series that I'm noodling in my brain, and it's all on the woman. It's about leveling up, and it's the narrative around menstruation and
Oh,
lack of menstruation.
we've talked about this on the
Yeah, yeah.
show.
And
Yeah, yeah. Super
leveling up,
Mario
and
Brothers.
exactly, Super Mario Brothers, exactly. And leveling up, and honestly, I don't feel like this leveling up and this freedom to be me would have been possible had I not had irregular periods. You know what I mean? Like I feel like there's a change that has happened, and the change is actually a release of, like, release the hands, Heather's here. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about some of the logistics of this. So you mentioned
Yeah.
that you feel like there's a big weight off, and I know you're
Mhm.
talking about a not a literal weight, but like a figurative weight. But let's talk about
Yeah.
literal weight, because you got
Yes.
35 paintings that are very big that you have
Yes.
to deal with. And so, you work out of your home studio and you don't live in a
Hmm.
castle. We should just let people
Nope.
know she doesn't live in a mansion or a castle. So
It's a one bedroom house. It's a one bedroom house. Yeah.
so you got all these paintings. Like, what has been the logistical process of painting that many paintings that are that large and now transporting them? Well, actually, I'm assuming they're already transported to the museum, because I'm sure they're in the process of.
No, that's
No.
September 11th. Now,
Oh,
yeah. So
really?
like that.
Okay.
Oh, yes, yes. Yeah. It's
Oh,
only a
wow.
week before. I know.
I would have thought they'd have
Only
them in their warehouse, and okay. So
no,
so you're still hanging
I
on to
know.
them. You still
Oh
have the
yeah.
literal weight.
They're literal weight. And in fact, there's still one thing left on my to-do list, which is to add hanging hardware to the remaining number of paintings
Oh,
that
and you have to do that
don't
too.
have
Okay.
hanging. Yeah. And so so much logistics. Like starting with, we know we've discussed I love painting on big canvases. I literally had to figure out, okay, what's the biggest canvas I can fit in my car,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of ordering and having canvases made for me, which turns out it's the 6 foot by 3 foot. That's the largest I can get in my car, uh, comfortably. And so I could get a bit wider, but then the proportions weren't right. So 6 foot by 3 foot was what I nailed on. Um, and then logistically, oh, sorry, and that's why the 3 foot was nailed on, is that getting it from the car up the studio stairs into, so my studio is a large space, but
But it's upstairs, yeah, up a small
it's
staircase.
upstairs, up a small staircase involving a corner. And so, how does
Some
one get
pivoting.
things correct? Pivot, exactly. And so, their logistics literally in just getting the canvases like home and upstairs in a cost-effective manner. Like, obviously, you could have large canvases shipped to you. I could also just paint on swaths of canvas and then staple them afterward. That's just not my process.
Mm-hmm.
I like having the firmness of the canvas. Um, anyway, so there were those logistics, but then even like finding paint and buying paint in the quantities that I needed uh in a rural area. Like
Mm.
I had to go to Toronto for the night. And I had dinner with a bunch of my girlfriends. They're like, "What are you doing tomorrow?" I'm like, "I'm gonna go to Gortzman's and drop a boatload of cash on paint." And everybody was like, "Send me a text with you." I'm like, "Yeah, I spent $700 on paint yesterday. Holy moly." And I looked like I robbed a bank. I was so happy leaving the store, having so, like, it was like,
Start the car.
look at like it literally was a start the car. Like I was so, because it was, to me, as any person getting supplies is, uh I was like, "Oh my God, I have so much to play with." Like I have so much to play with, and
Any
I have,
creative
yeah.
can appreciate that
Oh,
moment. Yeah.
it was, and like it was all I could do to not like pedal to the metal driving home. and like walking in the door, hi babe, I'm going upstairs to play. Like, boop, I need to go into my studio. Yeah, there
Yeah.
were, so the logistics of that, there were, financial logistics. So like balancing, okay, I need to make sure that I save. So for instance, I got all of this money basically a year ago. Um,
Now, let's just talk about the grant a
yep,
little bit, because
yeah,
you got a grant for $20,000. You
hmm
found out about it through the program
hmm
that you were in. You
hmm
had help writing your grant application. And there are people out there who do this. If you're
yes,
curious about that, there are people across the country who that is their job. They help
yep,
people apply for grants. And I should just mention, there is a lot of grant money out there for creatives. Problem is,
hmm
most of us don't know about it. And so I would love
correct.
to have a grant expert on the show at some point who specializes in grants for creatives. But you got a fairly large grant,
hmm
$20,000. But
Yep,
I think it's important for people to realize that's not like a book advance when you're writing a
no,
book. You don't get to use that money to pay your mortgage, right?
no,
Like, this is
no,
strictly for supplies and things related to the actual exhibition. Am I correct
correct.
in
And
that?
yes, you are. And there are, in fact, like restrictions on, there's restrictions on what you can apply for. So for instance, one of the things that I is part of the dollar value, I applied for a lot of dollar value towards, so that the things that in terms of a budget, I asked for money for canvases. I asked for money for paint. I asked for money to pay for my photographer to photograph all of the artwork. I asked for money for a photographer to help do promotional photos of me for the exhibition. I asked for money for the rental truck to take all of the paintings to. So on Monday, September 11th, I have a rental
A
truck. I'm
U-Haul kind
taking
of
all
thing.
of,
Yeah.
exactly, taking everything over to, I had to then budget, of course, keeping my fingers crossed that everything did sell, but I still have the budget allocated for a rental truck to bring everything home when the exhibition closes. But knock on wood, I'm not bringing all of it home. That, a chunk of it is being taken off the walls and going to people's homes, and everybody's very happy, and Heather has
Mm-hmm.
money in the bank. Um, and doesn't have to bring it all home, because it's just like bringing a puppy home. Like, I thought you went to a good home. I really didn't want to bring you home. Anyway, so there's that. But then I did ask for a small amount, and there was a limit to how much you could ask for what they call subsistence.
Mm.
So if I had so if my studio was outside of my house, I could have asked for help with rent. If my
Studio
studio was
rent, your studio rent.
yeah,
Yeah.
if my studio was outside of my house, I could have asked for help with, the bills for maintaining, like
Mm-hmm.
hydro.
Yeah.
But because it's part of my house and there's no real, like, there is a separation, but there isn't a separation.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't ask for those things, but I was able to ask for a small amount of subsistence, because I was saying that the scope of the project was so large that I would actually dedicate 30 weeks exclusively to painting, and that I would paint a painting per week in those 30 weeks. And so a small amount of it, I would not say, yeah, like less than half, was allocated to subsistence. But fun fact, this is taxable income. So the
Mm.
government gave me $20,000, 20243.00. I immediately put a chunk of that into my business savings account to pay the government taxes on that income. So
That's
that is,
really important to note. I think a lot of
yeah,
people don't realize that grant money is taxable.
taxable income. Yeah.
Something to
So
think
the
about.
government gives it to you, and then you have to give a chunk of it right back. Thank you. Um,
Yeah, with any luck, you've
but
got enough deductions and things that, hopefully not too much is going to go back to the government.
that,
But that's,
exactly.
that's another episode.
Yeah, that's another episode. Exactly. And so those dollars I used to purchase, and I allocated, for the printing of, some of my prints, not a full print run. Like, it doesn't it's not subsist it's not subsidizing. That's the word I'm
Right.
looking for. It's not subsidizing, print runs. I'm only doing a small print run so that I have visuals, and then everybody else is just going to order them, and that's where the money's coming from. Um, because I have invested so much in the actual creation. Like I spent a lot on canvases. I upgraded all of my paints. Um, yeah. So there was a lot of money spent on
So you really had to think,
supplies.
you really needed to think this through from the get-go. You needed to have
Hmm.
a budget. You needed to like outline exactly
Yep.
how much money you needed for all these different things. So I think that's a really important thing for people to recognize or to know
Yep.
if this is something you're thinking about doing and you're thinking about applying for grant money at the time. You can't just go to the government and say, I'd like $20,000 to paint,
No,
please.
sweet peaches. No, and in fact, like this is a Canada Council for the Arts grant. They have all of the information on their website, all of the things that are required as part of your
Mhm.
application, as part of the support documents. And so my application was like 8 pages long, and the support documents was like an additional 12
Yeah,
pages because
it's a job putting together a
it's a job. Oh my
grant
gosh, like
application.
pulling it together. I think I probably spent 40 hours
Hmm.
total
And you
pulling
had
the whole.
help. You had
And
help.
I had help. And I'll tell you categorically, like I manage $1 million budgets for clients using Excel spreadsheets. I was using an Excel spreadsheet. I felt like the dimmest person in the world.
Oh no.
I, I literally, I was like, Heather, I don't understand. Granted, there were formulas this is a minor detail, but there were formulas in the spreadsheet that when you clicked on the cell, you could not see the formula. You just saw that the number changed.
Oh,
And so you didn't, A
you didn't
was
know if it was
impacting
right.
B. Exactly. Like A was impacting B, but you didn't understand why, like what the,
What it meant.
anyway,
Yeah.
so what it meant. Anyway, so having somebody else and there was a lot of backup documentation. Like I had to have proof that the exhibit was happening, like a letter from the gallery. I had to have a venue map from the gallery stating exactly how big the space would be. I
Right.
had to have all of the information. So even the gallery had to pull together a spreadsheet for me to supply to the
Right.
application process on their contribution. So how much it's costing them to host me, basically.
Right. Oh,
So there were a
interesting.
lot of,
They're
yeah,
probably used to that though. I would imagine
they
like
they are.
that's part
Yeah,
of their
they
process.
are.
So, um,
Absolutely.
so you knew you were getting money to help you put the exhibit on to actually create
Hmm.
the artwork and everything that you needed to. There is a word that I to not raise an exhibit, not. Anyways, it's been bugging me
Mount,
this.
Mountain exhibition.
Yeah,
That's
I think that's
yeah,
probably the word I want. I'm not even
yeah.
sure that's the one. Anyways, um, but you, as you said, you dedicated 30 weeks to creating the
Hmm.
pieces for this exhibit. It is a
Yep,
big exhibit, so it was a considerable amount of time. That is more than half of a year. Like
yep.
that's longer than 6 months. So during that time, your income was or your ability to
Basic.
earn an income was severely impacted, I would say. Would be fair to say that?
Yeah, big
So
time.
how did
I
you plan for that? How did you like or did you plan for it or no?
so yes. So it was n- yeah. It wasn't. I mean, I'll say it was planned for in that I just was crossing my fingers and
As many of
hoping.
us do. I think
Yeah.
I don't
So
think you're
yeah, like I would say for sure, if I hadn't gotten the grant, I would never have even just purchased as many canvases. I would never have upgraded my paint. Um, the deliverable would have been smaller for sure if I hadn't gotten the grant. Absolutely. I also would have had to take on more freelance work, which I did not do. And so I did not, I have one consistent freelance client. That was it. I didn't take on any more clients or actively pursue any other clients. I sold some prints. I did a couple of things. I held some events. I sold a couple of paintings that I happened to have already created.
right.
But really, my income uh, was almost zero for all intents and purposes, zero for the entire creation process. Hence the small contract rule now to fill up the cookie jar, because the subsistence that I got from the grant was enough to sort of top me up. But I'll tell you categorically, Brian and his support emotionally, but big time financially in this, like having a partner who was like, yeah, babe, you can take the year off and just have fun in your studio. uh and like that was a huge, huge, huge gift he gave me. um I think, I mean, I don't want to speak for him. I've tried very hard with this whole exhibition to not speak for him and only speak for me, because this is all about me, not about him. No, but I don't want to speak for him. His experience with all of this is entirely different. Like he's a anyway, I don't want to touch on that, but his experience with all of this has been very different. The 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 meaning behind the paintings.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the exhibition, he completely was like, I wrote the dedication in the coffee table book is that it's for Brian, because when I wondered aloud if I could, he reminded me that I can.
Yeah.
And that support was huge. And the fact that he was able to say, yes, you can do this. It'll be a struggle for us, but we're doing it. It's worth it. You need to do this. You can't miss this opportunity. I see what the opportunity is. Like, that's a huge, huge gift.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have that was, otherwise I would have had to do better planning. I would have had to possibly get a part-time job that would have allowed me to have a regular painting schedule. It also, I mean, honestly, I didn't leave the house for like the whole painting process. If I left the house, it's because I was getting more paint. Like it's because I was getting supplies. I didn't leave the house. And so what, my costs went down to like nil. I only buy my jeans and t-shirts at Value Village. So like, you know, uh, yeah. So my costs went down, which was a
Yeah.
good thing. Um, because I did not, like, the money was, yeah, I would have had to have saved more money if I really wanted to dedicate that amount of time as freely as I did and still have, a Netflix account
Yeah.
and heat. Yeah.
We talk about this a lot on the show, Heather and I, but also other guests, and just the importance of when you do start off on your own to have an emergency fund. And
Yeah.
we call it an emergency fund, but in some ways it's also a freedom fund, because
Hmm.
when you have that fund, it when opportunities like this come along, where it may mean that your main source of income takes a hit, there is something there that can help you get through it. So you don't have to say no to those opportunities or limit
Yeah.
yourself in those opportunities. I mean, you really had, and I'm going to use the word luxury, because to me, it feels like a
Oh,
luxury
oh my God.
of
Yes.
being able to
Yes.
just immerse yourself in this
Yep.
and really embrace the whole experience, and
Yep.
also allow yourself to creatively just flow,
Yes.
and when you're
Yes.
managing a job, or you're managing multiple clients, or you're managing a family, or parents, or whole
Yep.
life.
Yes.
It can be really hard to find that flow in for any
Yep.
extended period of time. And so you were able to do that, which I think is fantastic, that you were able to make that
Yeah.
happen. But
Yeah.
again, you had some pieces in place that made it
Yeah.
easier for you to take the
Oh,
opportunity. And so
absolutely.
preparation,
Absolutely. Like
again,
there's
preparation.
absolutely. And there's no, yeah, like all I was on a three-legged stool, and those three legs were, one was the grant, the second was the support from Brian, and then third was just my own chutzpah
Yeah,
on the, like, okay, like,
yeah,
girlfriend, just dive into the deep end. Let's go head
yeah,
first. Here we go.
yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's yeah, and there's a certain amount of privilege that goes with that too. I mean, for some people don't have the support of a partner,
Yep.
financial or emotional, or
Yep.
both.
Yep.
And there's so many variables that go into it,
Yes.
that you can't take for granted when you're doing something like this.
No, God, no.
Uh, so let's talk about the coffee table book, because that's pretty exciting. What
Yep.
what gave you the idea to do that, and what's that been like to pull that all together?
That process has been super cathartic as well, and very rewarding. And
Mhm.
when I initially thought of it, I mean, I have art coffee table back pointing behind me, of course, in the helpful way that podcasters do. I'm pointing behind me to Melissa that nobody else can see. Um, but I have, a whole host of coffee table books that are, Chagall and Monet
Hmm.
and other artists that I love, that I found thrifting, vintage, whatever, antique markets. I love big old books that smell like big old books. And I was literally on the floor of my studio doing something with one of the paintings, and I just sort of looked up and saw the stack of them, and I was like, man, that'd be so cool to have my art in a coffee table book. And then I was like, wait a minute, why couldn't I put my art in a coffee table book? And so immediately I was like, well, that's what I'm going to do. Like, and I looked, I talked to a couple publishers. I looked into working with like anyway, I ended up just using an online publisher, like do it yourself. I designed it myself, did all of it myself and printed it. It's not going to be a moneymaker in terms of the exhibition. Where I'm hoping to actually make money is in the selling of the paintings
Yeah.
and the limited run prints. The coffee table book, honestly, the time that I spent putting it together in terms of justifying it, I kept saying to myself, if all this is just a memento for me of what I've accomplished, this is worth it as time well spent. Capturing
Absolutely.
these stories, pulling this all together, writing all of this down. This was a huge accomplishment in my life. In fact, the file name and this is all like this whole thing is just dripping with irony, double entendres, etc. in terms of baby. But I labeled the file in the creation of the coffee table book as my brag book. Because moms and grandmas carry around literally brag books in their purse. Like it's the good old days. They pull out photo albums now that their brag book is their iPhone or whatever. But this is my brag book. And I wanted to pull it together for me and me alone. I expressed that on my Instagram, and a lot of people and then people offline, like my mom and my parents, we want that too. We want to one celebrate it and have all of this together, because how cool is that? And so there's a few people who are interested. I'm only doing it as a pre-order. I'm not stockpiling books in my house. And it's not going to be a moneymaker. I'm basically just covering my expenses and covering the shipping costs, and you know
Yeah.
that's it. But for me, that's not the point of this. This is
It's a gift to yourself.
it's a gift to myself and the people. And funny enough, it's the gift that keeps on giving, because the people who are choosing to buy it with their, I've received messages from people who are like, started talking about this. I've been saving up for it. This is going to be my birthday present to myself this year. Like that, in terms of getting me crying, that is a gift. Like somebody saying something like that, it's not about the money. It's the support and the fact that they're doing something that, like, it means a lot. That's huge.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, I
yeah.
think it's awesome. Can I ask, and I can edit this out if you don't
Yeah.
want it mentioned, but can I ask
Yeah.
who you went through to publish it? Which platform?
I used Blurb.
Oh, okay.
Blurb.
Okay. I
Yeah,
wondered
yeah,
if it was
Blurb.
Blurb, but I know there's a few out there that do this kind
Yeah.
of thing now. So,
Honestly, I found the platform just super easy to navigate. It
mhm.
was easy to use. I have to say, like, the quality is exceptional. Like, this is when I imagined a coffee table book, although I thought it would be thicker. That's what she said. But it's only 32 pages because it's all of my paintings, right? And so I imagined this like big, thick, like inches thick coffee table book, but I would have to create like
You need
100
a
more
few more
paintings.
paintings.
Well,
Or
and
a
then of
lot more
course,
words.
or a lot more words. And that's exactly, honestly, I could have made it double. I could have made it double, but then I would have been, it just made the cost skyrocket, right?
It's an
And
exhibition book,
so,
Heather. Most
yeah,
exhibition books are thin. It's not a,
yeah,
yeah. So it's not a
exactly. I
compendium of
know.
all your life's work.
Exactly. I
So
know. But
celebrating this.
I know. But and that's, I have to remember, this is like a chapter in
Yes,
in the series. Yeah.
this
As
is a
opposed to the
bookmark,
book.
yeah,
Yeah.
of a
Yeah.
moment in your career that you
Yes.
should be very proud of. So
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. And so that's exactly it. Like I use Blurb, and honestly I found it super easy. The quality is amazing. And this is not sponsored. I paid full price.
No, I've used
And
Blurb before too for things, and they are great. I just wondered what it was because I help
yeah.
people make books, so I'm always curious what
Yeah.
people are using
Yeah.
for printing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I will say though, the exceptional quality of the photos of my work, that like having Jason and his exceptional skills, he takes the photography of my artwork, which then creates my prints, but also of course were the files that I
mhm.
used in the book. The painting, like it's the painting. Like it's the
Yeah.
painting. It's not
And
a picture of the painting, it's the painting. Like it's
this is something
yeah.
to consider, particularly if you create large art
Mm.
pieces of artwork. I create small pieces of artwork. I can scan them and have exceptional quality prints from the comfort of my studio. But
Yeah.
when you create large pieces of artwork, that's not possible.
No.
Or not possible without a lot of tricky negotiating and
Yep.
maneuvering. So in those instances, you need to hire a photographer. I mean, you don't need to hire a photographer. You can photograph and stitch them all together yourselves, but that's a skill in its own right.
Yeah. Yep.
And getting the lighting right on a piece of artwork so that it looks like a piece of artwork and not a piece of artwork on a wall
Yeah.
is not easy. Like
No.
so yes, that's something you really have to think about if you're doing large scale artworks and you want to do something like Heather's doing, where you're doing prints and you're doing
Yeah.
coffee table books and marketing materials and things like that. So
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
good budget line to have for
Oh,
sure.
no kidding. And honestly, I mean, I thank my lucky stars that Jason and I were connected. And again,
Finding the right
that's
person.
small,
Yeah, that's a
finding the
huge.
right person. But back to this, I found him because I spoke to somebody in my local community
Yeah.
in person, where I purchased my canvases in person, and asked them, and they connected me to another person.
Yeah.
We now regularly chat on Instagram, but because of our offline connection. So,
This
yeah.
is what makes me sad about all the little independent photography stores that are disappearing. My local one, which has been around for since I was a little kid, they closed up
Mm,
last year or the year before. But that was like, if you needed to find a photographer who did this or did
yeah.
that or whatever, you went there and they knew them and they could
Yeah.
tell you how to get in touch with them. And we're kind
I
of
know.
losing that. It makes
I
me a little
know.
bit sad. Um,
I know.
yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, uh, so tell us, we should wrap up because we've gone over the
Mm,
hour here, but tell us the details. Where can we go? Where you've already told us where the exhibit is, but just maybe
mm.
reiterate that. Where can we buy prints? Where can we pre-order a copy of the book? All the good juicy stuff. We'll put it all in the show notes for everybody who's interested in either actually visiting the exhibition if they're able, or
Mhm.
supporting you in some other way, or just want to see more of your work.
Yes. So the exhibition is happening September 16th through December 31st, 2023 at the Bruce County Museum and Cultural Center, which is in Southampton, Ontario.
We'll put an address in the
And
show notes.
yes,
Yeah.
and the opening event, which is happening September 16th, the RSVPs are available. You can actually go to the Bruce County Museum, just type in Bruce County Museum, and it'll pop up on Google. You can RSVP for the opening event, which is free. There's also a bunch of other events that are local that people can participate in. If people are interested, oh, and the exhibition, in addition to being in person, there will be a virtual gallery tour.
Oh,
Uh,
cool. So I can see
yeah,
it. Yay.
yes. So everybody across the country or all over the
That's
world can
awesome.
actually, yeah, which is super cool. So everybody can
Yeah.
see the virtual tour, which is really neat, and that will be
Yeah.
available on the Bruce County Museum website. And then the limited run prints, as well as the coffee table book and the ability to purchase any of the paintings is on my website, which is heatherlyntravis.com. And of
Awesome.
course, I'm on Instagram at Heather Travis. Yeah.
Will people be able to purchase directly at the museum, like when they finish
Yes.
watching? Yeah. Okay. That's cool too.
Yes. Yep.
All
So
right.
that will be a logistical thing that I need to tackle, is making sure. I mean, that will be a delightful problem if people are like, I bought it on our website 10 minutes after somebody bought it at the museum, but I don't,
Yes. Yeah. You'll have to
yeah.
sort that out a little bit.
We'll have to sort that out. The gallery will keep me abreast of any sales, of
Yeah.
course, that happen there. But yeah.
Awesome. Very cool.
Mhm.
We will have Heather back on the show after the exhibition closes to talk a little bit about what the actual experience of holding the exhibition was like and how it all went. So she can update us on how everything went. That will be in the
I can
new
tell you
year.
how it feels I can tell you how it feels to sell out. We're just going to manifest this right
Yes,
now.
exactly. You won't need the U-Haul to haul them back. There won't
Exactly.
be any
Yeah.
left.
No,
Do you
exactly.
actually, that is a question for you. Is there one or maybe two paintings in particular that you want to bring home with you? Or are you really hoping to sell them all? You don't have to tell us which one, but just out of
Yes. And
curiosity.
no, I've told the world this, so I hope the person who does purchase it realizes what they have, because I might just show up at their house to visit it one day. Um, but the painting of Brian and I, This Must Be the Place, the centerpiece. It's not the centerpiece, but it's the sort of the piece that is. It's the title of the painting. This Must Be the Place. It's the title of the exhibition. It's the title of the coffee table book. It was the sort of visual genesis of a lot of
Right.
the inspiration. Yeah. But if yeah, like I really want to mark that up to like $10,000. Be like, if you want it, you really have
You're
to pay
paying
for
for
it.
it.
But no, I will. It needs to go out into the world, and it would make me happy to be in somebody's home and celebrated with as much joy as I find in it. So I will release it reluctantly. That's the only one though. Everything else, I'm so happy with all of them. I'm gonna miss like Missy Elliott. She's been done for a long time, and I've had
Yeah,
her
it was one of the first ones you
hanging on
did.
the wall. I will really miss having her. But I can't keep all of my paintings. I can't
No,
keep all
it's
of my paintings. So,
one of the hardest parts of being a visual creator or any kind of
yeah,
creator is putting your
yeah.
originals out into the world.
Yeah. And that's part of the coffee table book, honestly. Like I can flip through it and it's not, I think to me, that's very different than flipping through. Like I have pictures of every painting I've ever painted on my phone and in my,
No,
on
that's
drives.
not
And
the same.
that's
Yeah.
not the same, like flipping through like the,
Just
the
did an
Brad.
interview with a photographer and we had this conversation about
Yeah.
how so much of our stuff winds up living in a cloud somewhere and
Yeah.
how we don't treasure it in the same way as when it's printed.
Yes.
So having that book, I think, is important.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and funny enough, even just pulling it together, like whether I ever open it up, which like I've literally opened it. I think the spine is already like I've opened it up so many times.
It's got fingerprints all over it now.
Oh my God, it's got fingerprints all over it now. Exactly. Um, you know, it- yeah. Even if I never opened it up, even just pulling it together and knowing that it's there,
Mhm.
and funny enough, back to the whole baby thing again, but like legacy, like I what's going to happen to all of my stuff? Where's it going to go? You know what? Someday, I have no idea how many years from now, somebody's going to find this coffee table book in a thrift shop and pay $3 for it, or with inflation, probably 100. But they're going to have no idea who I am, and find this thing and maybe they'll be happy, and like that's pretty cool. So
It is. Some of the best surprises are finding
yeah,
art in
yeah,
thrift stores and
yeah.
discovering who that person was that created it.
Exactly. So if
Real
that's what
treasure.
if if these are the little horcruxes that I'm leaving around, little pieces of me, to make a Harry Potter reference, if if these are the little pieces of me that are around the world that you know ever get collected or found.
You don't know though. You could be a household name and those books could be collector's
And
items.
that's the other thing is
That could,
when I'm world
you never
famous,
know
like
what our
exactly,
legacy will
and that's
be.
exactly it. So like but from major to minor, like to me it's just yay me, I did it. And
Yes.
that's
Yay,
yeah.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh,
Yeah.
well, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us on this episode. It's a little different from the kind of episodes Heather and I usually do, but I really um, wanted you to be able to share what this has been like for you because I
Thank
know
you.
it's been such a huge thing for you. And it would be weird if we didn't talk about it on this show. as
Yes,
well.
it's like ignoring a whole year of
I
my
know
life.
it
It's
would be very
great.
strange if we didn't talk about it. But I hope that it was helpful to everyone out there who is thinking about doing something bigger with their work,
Hmm.
whatever that is, whether it's an
Hmm.
exhibit or uh, trying to create a collection that is out of your normal scope, or writing your big opus manuscript, or writing a symphony instead of a commercial jingle. I don't know. We all have these
Yep.
big goals that we want to, and it's always great to hear how somebody went from it just being an inkling in the back of their head, an itch that they would like to scratch, to bringing it to life, because it's quite a
Hmm.
process. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And yeah, I hope everybody gets an opportunity to, at the very least, check it out on the Bruce County Museum
Oh,
website,
yes.
because
I hope so too.
that'll be really cool. Yeah, I know a lot of us will not be able to travel um
No.
see it in person,
Wait, you're
but
not flying across the country? Come on.
I gave a lot of
Right?
money to my dentist this year. So
Seriously. And
I'm not going
again,
anywhere.
I repeat, this is the person who's been freelance for almost 8 years who got a part-time contract job
Yep,
because
I hear you.
so yeah.
Yeah, that's it for this week, everyone. We'll be back in another 2 weeks with another brand new episode. And like I said, we have some really incredible women coming on the show this season that I'm really excited about, and lots to talk about. So I hope that you will be here with us again in a couple of weeks. And until then, thank you, Heather. And
Thank
thank you
you.
all for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for joining us for the And She Looked Up Creative Hour. If you're looking for links or resources mentioned in this episode, you can find detailed show notes on our website at andshелookedup.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter for more business tips, profiles of inspiring Canadian creative women, and so much more. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the show via your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. We always love to hear from you, so we'd love it if you'd leave us a review through iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Drop us a note via our website at andshелookedup.com, or come say hi on Instagram at andshелookedup. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.